knows what resolution is? Ooh, pixels, size of the image, quality of the image. Yeah, that all sounds about right. Let's say this person has a 16 megapixel camera, and this person has a 24 megapixel camera. Which of those cameras has higher resolution? 16 or 24?
24.
Yeah, 24 has more pixels in it. It's more pixels. So that would be a higher resolution camera. Okay. Let's say I had to send a file off to a client, and they were going to print it in a magazine. So they wanted that file at 300 DPI, PPI, which would it be? PPI. 300 pixels per inch. And then someone else wants it for their Facebook page, and they wanted it like 72 or 96 pixels per inch. 300 pixels per inch, 96 pixels per inch. Which one's higher resolution? 300. That's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Okay, well, try this. Take a look on the screen for a second, and let's see if you can answer this one. You guys think you're so fancy. Let's say I went into my workflow options down here, and I took this file, and I processed it out at 300 pixels per inch, and I hit OK, and I hit Open Image. So here's the image at 300 pixels per inch. Then I go back to the exact same raw file, and I change my settings, and I process it out at 72 pixels per inch, and I open it up. So we have two versions of this image. One of them is 300 pixels per inch, and one of them is 72 pixels per inch. If I were to save these to the hard drive as uncompressed TIFF files, which one would take up more space, the 300 pixels per inch or the 72 pixels per inch? 300. Seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Let's investigate that. Let's take a look at this 300 pixel per inch image. So here's the 300 pixel per inch, and if I go under Image, Image size, it'll give me all the specs about this file. It's 23.4 megabytes worth of information, which makes sense. It was from a Canon 20D, I think, which was an 8 megapixel camera. And there's 3 color channels, red, green, and blue. 8 times 3 is 24. So it's about 24 megabytes worth of information. 2,336 pixels wide by 3,504 pixels high, 300 pixels per inch. OK, let's take a look at the 72 pixel per inch one. Here's the 72 image, image size, and it's 23.4 megabytes worth of information. It's 2,336 pixels wide, and it's 3,504 pixels high. It's exactly the same size as the other one. Well, how did that happen? We've got 300 pixels per inch over here, and we've got 72 pixels per inch, but they're exactly the same. Something has changed. Well, there's no compression involved. This is just it open as a grid of pixels in Photoshop. And this grid is 2336 by 3504. Well, it's the same raw file, so we know it came from the same camera, and we know that camera is 8 megapixels. 8 megapixels, 8 megapixels. They're the same resolution. Well, crap, that must mean that there's two definitions for resolution, isn't there? One of them is the number of pixels in the file. So if I had a file that was 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels, that would have 1 million pixels in it. 1,000 times 1,000, a million pixels. That would be 1 megapixel. But if I printed that at 1,000 pixels per inch, how big would it print? If it's 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels, and I printed at 1,000 pixels per inch on a sheet of paper, how big would it print? 1 inch. 1 inch by 1 inch. OK. If I printed it at 100 pixels per inch, how big would it print? It's 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. If I printed it at 100 pixels per inch, if I printed it at 10 pixels per inch, it would be 100, because 10 times 100 is 1,000. But if I printed it at 100 pixels per inch, 100 times 10 is 1,000. So it would be 10 inches by 10 inches. So clearly, the bigger the print, the lower the resolution is, even if it's the same resolution. OK, so if we think of resolution as the number of pixels in the image, 2336 by 3,504, that's 8 million pixels. This is how big those pixels are. So if I printed this out, file, print, and then I cut out 1 square inch of it, at 300 pixels per inch, it would be 300 pixels across and 300 pixels down. Well, that's obvious. And if I printed this one out, file, print, cut out 1 square inch of it, it would be 72 pixels across and 72 pixels down. So for every linear inch, there'd be 72 pixels. So something else has to be different about these prints. What might that be? Well, could I print this one over here? Here's the 300 pixels per inch. And if I did print it, image size, it would be 7.8 inches by 11.6. So I couldn't quite get it on a sheet of 8.5 by 11, but if I had a sheet of 11 by 17 paper, I could print it in the print lab down the hall, couldn't I? Because those things can do up to 17 by 22. All right, so it's just a little bit larger than what you could fit on a sheet of photocopier paper. What about the other one? Here's the 72 pixels per inch. Image size, and it comes out, holy mackerel, it comes out over 4 feet tall. So these pixels, 72 pixels per inch, they're bigger. Each pixel is a 72nd of an inch. This one is 300 pixels per inch, which means that every pixel is a tiny little 300th of an inch wide. So these are physically smaller pixels. So the other way of thinking about resolution is the physical size of the pixels. Here's a question. If I were to print this at this image here, 1 pixel per inch, how big would it print? So I set it to 1 pixel per inch, I go File, Print. How big would it be? Well, how many pixels is it? It's 2,336 pixels wide. If I printed it at 1 pixel per inch, it would be 2,336 inches wide. Now, let's say I did do that, hypothetically speaking. I mean, that would be the size of a skyscraper downtown. So let's say I did print it out, and then I went downtown and I stuck it onto the side of a skyscraper. And I stood there and I looked at it. Would it be a high-quality photograph? No, every pixel would be 1 inch by 1 inch. It would look like tiles. Standing this close, I wouldn't even know what it was. But let's say I walked a couple kilometers down the street, or I guess ran, because if I stuck this on the side of a building downtown, the police would be after me. And I get about 3 kilometers and I look back. Would it be a high-quality picture? Oh, suddenly it would kind of, wouldn't it? It would look pretty darn good. Billboards. You guys have driven by and you see the billboards up there. Most of them are digital now. And you think, okay, well, my iPhone screen's like 300 pixels per inch. So a billboard at 300 pixels per inch, there's no camera that could do that, is there? Well, obviously your billboards aren't 300. Anybody ever climbed up and looked at a billboard up close? If I was working at a studio where they were tearing one down, and the pieces that were coming down, it looked like somebody had taken bingo dabbers and it was just like huge dots of color. And up close, it looked like crap. But, 300 feet down the street, it looks pretty good. So this number here really has nothing to do with the potential image quality of something. This guy with the 16 megapixel camera can do 300 pixels per inch. It'll just be physically smaller when he prints it than this guy with the 24 when he prints it. His will be a little bit larger. But if you're only doing, say, like an 8 by 10, either of them will be pretty much exactly the same. You get those like bloggers that buy the latest 50 megapixel Canon for Facebook. Probably don't need that kind of resolution. So don't get too hung up on this resolution in here. Let's say you're sending a file to the client, and the client says, yeah, we're going to need that 8 by 10. Is that enough information for you to give them a properly sized file? Give me an 8 by 10. Is it going to be used, 8 by 10, but are they going to be publishing it in a magazine where it's going to be 300 pixels per inch is the standard resolution, in which case that 10 inches high at 300 pixels per inch, how many pixels high do they need? 10 inches high, 300 pixels per inch, 3,000 pixels high. It'd be 2,400 by 3,000 pixels. Or is it going to go as like a background on one of their web pages where they only need like 72 pixels per inch, in which case that 10 inches high would only be 720 pixels. Very different requirements. You don't know which they need. If they just said, yeah, we're going to be publishing this, so you're going to have to give it to us at 300, and they'll say DPI. They'll be wrong. They mean PPI. But they'll give it to us 300 DPI. Is that enough information for you to give them a properly sized file? Again, is it like a full-page ad in an 8.5 by 11 magazine, in which case it would have to be 3,300 pixels high? Or is it like a little article that the guy wrote, and it's going to be a little 1-inch high picture of his headshot at the top of the article, in which case it only needs to be 300 pixels high? So to properly size an image, if they're just giving you size or resolution, you need 2 bits of information. Give me an 8 by 10 at 300 pixels per inch. Now I know what size you need. Or the other thing they could do is just say, well, we're going to need that at least 1,500 pixels on the long side. That's all you need. Give it to us, 3,000 pixels wide. That's all you need. Because they can change this to be whatever they want. Like I said, if I turn that to 1 pixel per inch, look what happens to the dimensions. It becomes 2336 by 3,504 pixels. Who can tell me, accurate to within 1,000th of an inch, how big this would print if I were to print it at 1,000 pixels per inch? Accurate to within 1,000th of an inch. Well, what if I printed it at 10 pixels per inch? Oh, suddenly it's only 233.6 inches. What if I printed it at 100 pixels per inch? It's 23.36. So if I printed it at 1,000 pixels per inch, how big would it print? Like 2.336 by? 3.504. So that's accurate within a thousandth of an inch. Good math. Okay. So there's a little handout that's on there that kind of explains it as well, because it's one of those things that it's tough to wrap your brain around at first. There's a little handout there called output resolution, and basically this is just an image I grabbed off the internet. It's 500 pixels wide, and it's 344 pixels high. That's not going to change. No pixel in this image is going to change. But if we were to print that at the standard, kind of internet resolution of 72 pixels per inch, which is a bit of a throwback. This number is changing. This comes from, how many people remember the late 1980s? Early 90s? Crap. The standard monitors back then were the 14-inch RGB monitors, which were 680 pixels wide by 480 pixels high, and they actually were 72 pixels per inch. So when you see that number, that's where that comes from. Are any screens these days 72 pixels per inch? Pretty much nothing you're looking at down there, whether it's a phone, whether it's an iMac. Maybe this is the projector. But that's a bit of an anachronism. This will start to change over time. But a lot of things still expect that. Websites, PowerPoint presentations still expect that 72. It's going to change, though. But if I printed this at 72 pixels per inch, it would print about 5 by 7, roughly, kind of the standard photo size. Would it be a high-quality 5 by 7 at 72 pixels per inch? Not really. You would actually, if you looked at it close, you would see the pixels in there. Now, if I printed that at 1 pixel per inch, remember it's 344 pixels high, it would print 344 inches high, nearly 30 feet high. And that's what it would look like if I were to print it out and stick it onto the side of the building. I used to joke and say that I actually did, and I swam across and I stuck it up, and then somebody's like, how come there's no reflection? Like, but that's how big it would actually, but again, it's all the same pixels in there. Nothing's changed. If I took that same file and I printed it at the standard press, you're going to the magazine or whatever, 300 pixels per inch, it's coming out about the size of a postage stamp. Remember, at 300 pixels per inch, this is 344 pixels high, so there would be your inch, so it would be just over an inch high, about the size of a stamp. And if we printed it at 1,000 pixels per inch, which seems like a crazy high resolution, but back in the days of film, you guys remember film? When I was in college, it was all film-based. And actually, even after I graduated, it was film for quite a while. There was a magazine, and the guy who was their press operator was like, he'd been there for a long time. And you had to send him 9 by 12 prints, and he would scan the prints. So even when I get a job from a client, I would have the film scanned, because it was all film. I do all the cleaning up of the dust and stuff, do all the retouching on it. And then I could burn a disc and send it to the guy, because FTP and stuff wasn't, it was like, we're talking like dial-up, screeching noise on the phone internet. I could have sent a disc, and it would all be, but no, he has to have a print. So we would send it to an output house, and they would use what's called an image recorder to actually burn that image back onto another piece of film, another negative, at around 1,000 pixels per inch. And then we put that negative into an enlarger, make another print, stick it in an envelope, courier it to Quebec, where the guy would then scan it back into a digital format to run it in the magazine. He left shortly thereafter, retired, I'm pretty sure, because he must have been pretty darned old. But at 1,000 pixels per inch, remember it was 500 pixels wide. 500 pixels is half of 1,000. It comes out a half an inch wide. So the only thing that's changed about this image is its output resolution. The image resolution, the total number of pixels in the image, is exactly the same. So all the pixels are still there. They're exactly the same size relative to each other. Now, image resolution is apparently expressed, I got a typo in there, I'll have to fix that. It's expressed as pixels per inch, or PPI. Be aware that though technically different, DPI, or dots per inch, is often substituted for PPI. When you're working in the industry, and probably some of your teachers will say, oh, you're gonna have to print this out at least 300 DPI. They mean PPI. Don't correct them, because they'll probably smack you and never hire you again. You might even hear me say DPI every now and then. It's rampant through the industry. Anybody know what DPI actually does refer to? Yeah. In what context? Yeah, if you're having something printed. The printers down the hall, they're Epson 4900s, and I think they're capable of 2,880 dots per inch. And you're like, wow, that is crazy high resolution, 2,880. Does that mean you should send your files to it at 2,880 PPI? No. Anything over like 300, 360 pixels per inch is overkill for those printers. Why would the printers be capable of such higher resolution than the files you should be sending to them? Any thoughts on that? Yeah, level of detail. I might have mentioned I'm like ludicrously old, and the first inkjet printer I got was an Epson Stylus Color. It was 720 DPI, and it only had 4 ink cartridges in it. Those ones, by comparison, have I think 10 So it had cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and 720 little dots of ink it was capable of putting out per inch, which means that the pictures I printed, first off, they took like a frickin' hour. Well, my first printer actually took about 4 hours to print. To print an 8x10, I could start it printing, I could go watch a movie, have dinner, come home and go, crap, it's still printing. It would do like print, print, and then it would sit there for a couple of minutes as it was basically figuring out where all those little dots are going to go on the page. But you could see all the dots, so it had this kind of grainy, gritty sort of look to it. And especially in lighter areas. Remember, it's like pretty big dots. To get like skies, well, you can't put those dots close together, so it would do big dots of dark cyan and dark magenta ink for the sky far apart, so you'd see this kind of speckliness through it. By increasing the resolution, by making those dots smaller, you can put them closer together and it appears to be a little bit smoother. Another thing they did to get smoother images was they added light colors. There's cyan magenta, light cyan, light magenta, yellow, no light yellow because yellow is already pretty light. But by putting those lighter colors in, they could do lighter dots even closer together to simulate the brightness without using dark. And adding, the 8 cartridges and stuff, how many colors are there available in a photograph? Like let's say you're working on a JPEG file, so it's 8 bits per channel. How many shades of gray were there available per color channel in an 8-bit image from the darkest black to the brightest white? 256. And there's 3 color channels in there. If you multiply that together, 256 times 256, 16.7 million possible colors. I didn't do the math there, I know that already. But with only 8 cartridges of ink, that's 8 colors, you got to simulate 16.7 million colors. So also the fact that those dots are so small means that you can put down a few little dots of the only colors you have available to simulate any of the colors that you can create in a file in Photoshop. So yeah, that's types of resolution. Think of it as image resolution, how many pixels by how many pixels, or how many millions of pixels or megapixels are in the image. So your camera will dictate the maximum potential size you can print. This camera here, this one was done on was an 8 megapixel. If someone has a 24 megapixel, does that mean that its files are going to be 3 times larger? Let's say with the 8x10, you could print something that's say 10 inches high. With a 24 megapixel, does that mean you could print it 30 inches high? No, because it's going all directions, left, right, up, and down. So it'll get a little bit larger, but it's not, say you got like an 8 and a 16, doesn't mean that you can print things twice as wide with the 16, because it's getting wider and larger as well. So it's kind of like squaring as opposed to doubling. The other way of thinking about resolution is the physical size of the pixels, the number of pixels per inch. It's one of those things that's a little bit kind of tough to wrap your brain around until you're using it, until your professor says we're going to need this 8x10, 300 pixels per inch. And you start scaling things down, cropping them, it'll start to make a little bit more sense.